it's Tim with the University of Vinyl. Today I'm going to weigh in on the entire controversy surrounding Mobile Fidelity Sound Labs. I'm sure everyone is on top of the story. My thinking, in a nutshell, is it's all about your ears. Whether or not some of the MoFi titles have been sourced from DSD digital files, or maybe a dub copy, a high quality tape of a master tape has been used to cut lacquers from, I really don't care. I like the Mobile Fidelity product. I have a lot of digital records in my collection. I'm kind of parroting. There was a great video over the weekend from Mike at Hub Tunes. Check out his video because he has a lot of MoFis in his collection. Me personally, I probably have about 35 MoFi titles. And I have a couple of the older, the first regime titles. I've got American Beauty. I have Face Dances from The Who. And then I have a lot of the newer titles. In fact, I just got a text message from MoFi notifying me that Tiger Lily was back in stock, the great Natalie Merchant solo album. And I was able to secure that. Again, I love these. Mike at the In Groove has that capability on his website as well. Enter your phone number and you will receive a text when the thing comes back in stock, and you can deal with it right there on the spot if you want to secure a copy. Anyway, back to MoFi, back to digital records. This all came about. Michael Ludwig from 45 RPM Audiophile, fantastic channel here in the vinyl community. He started talking about 40,000 copies of Thriller, which, if you do the math, it's impossible that they would allow that master tape to be released and re-hit upon for all the amount of lacquers that you're going to need to press 40,000 copies. Now, there was a real good, interesting post that Michael Esposito did from the In Groove. I'm sure you've seen that. And he raised a lot of issues with not naming sources, which has been a bone of contention for some people. But the interesting thing is Mobile Fidelity have reached out to Mike, according to Mike, and he has been invited to their HQ in Sebastopol, California. I believe we will have more information on exactly what is happening with Mobile Fidelity, over the past several years. Are they using copies of the master analog tape to make lacquers from the copies? Are they using or adding some kind of a digital step in the mastering chain? To be continued. I do think the result of this hopefully will see Mobile Fidelity being absolutely transparent in how they're producing these records. All I know is that they sound freaking amazing for the most part. I don't think I have any dud MoFis in my collection, and let me show you two of my favorites. Brothers in Arms, double 45 RPM cut. This was sourced from a digital recording, we know that, and it sounds absolutely amazing. The OG sounds very, very good, but this is better. So, hey, I want to have the best sounding records in my collection, and this is definitely one of them. I know it was a digitally sourced and recorded master tape. It is what it is. Sounds great. Another incredible sounding record in my collection. I don't have a 4AD original pressed in the UK. That supposedly sounds great, so I can't compare, but this is also a fantastic record that MoFi put out. This was on a single 33 RPM, I believe. Outside of MoFi, I have some incredible sounding digitally sourced records. Here's a great example. Beck's Sea Change. This is a double 33 and a third RPM. This was put out by the label. This is not a special audiophile record at all, but it sounds absolutely amazing. There is also a Mobile Fidelity version of this, which I am hearing sounds incredible as well, if you can get your hands on one. I'm perfectly happy with this for the time being as well. Those are just a couple examples of a couple MoFi titles that I really do enjoy. They were sourced from digital. What I don't like, though, is MoFi not being 100% transparent in their mastering chain description. I think hopefully we're going to be maybe seeing some changes in that. If that's what comes out of this, that's better for people who, you know, are 100% invested in wanting to know the mastering process. For me, I'm not going to be selling any of my MoFis. I don't think the value will be dropping on any of those. There is a question, though, on the one steps. You know, the records that they're currently charging either $100 or $125 for. If there is more than one step involved in that mastering chain, I don't know if they can. Well, I'm sure they can. The market is not going to be going away for Mobile Fidelity, in my opinion. I'm just hoping for more transparency. So good luck, Mike Esposito. I'm curious to find out what comes from your meeting. And another thing I wanted to mention, Michael Freemer and Michael Ludwig from 45 RPM Audiophile, they had an interview that Michael Ludwig hosted over the weekend. It was a fantastic interview. I'm actually going to drop a link to that interview, which was a live stream actually, and they took kind of questions on the fly, which was nice. And Freemer was very kind of composed and sane, which some of the interviews I've seen with him, he can be a little bit scattered. I love his sense of humor. Don't get me wrong there, but this was a particularly great in-depth interview, and Fremer basically kind of let us know that I think what I gained from that interview is that the Thriller one step, the lacquers that are going to be used to press the 40,000 copies are coming from a direct copy of the master tape. So not cut directly from the master tape, but cut from a copy, most definitely probably a very, very high resolution copy of that master tape. The question is, for audiophiles, is there going to be any loss of information from the master tape to that copy? I'm not an audiophile. I don't claim to be an audiophile, so I don't know the answer to that. But I'm interested to see what comes from this entire episode, and hopefully we will be getting more transparency from Mobile Fidelity. Again, I'm going to chime in. Many others have mentioned this. I love what Neil Young is doing on the back of his reissues and bootleg series albums, where he is actually listing the mastering chain, how everything was produced, whether it was cut from an analog tape or maybe it was digitally sourced. Either way is great. As long as we know, the consumer, I think, has a right to know especially for audiophile labels and expensive records. I think that's only fair. In the spirit of this whole issue, I thought it would be kind of cool to revisit my collection and take a look at 15 fantastic sounding albums that were all mastered from the original master tapes. These are analog records, and if you've watched my channel before, you can see that I put a lot of weight into the mastering engineer, how or where it was pressed. Those are the two very, very important elements in a record as far as I'm concerned. And I've done many, many videos on mastering engineers. Check out the playlist. So today I'm taking another look at my collection. I have assembled 15 records. These are all, funnily enough, basically original pressings, very early pressings that came out in the 1960s or 1970s or 1980s, before the advent of digital technology. And I think they still sound absolutely amazing. There's only one reissue I'm going to mention in those 15, but it was basically a repress done by an esteemed mastering engineer that sounds amazing. So stay tuned. Here are 15 all analog, incredibly great sounding records. I'm not going to go in any order. I'm just going to go through these, and I'm not going to go too deep on them, but trust me when I say all of these albums have something in common. They have an incredible full soundstage. There is not a single one of these that is lacking on the bottom end as far as bass response. The soundstage on these things is full. I'm talking about highs, mids. I'm talking about smooth listening experiences for the most part. There is one record that I'm going to showcase that is basically a roller coaster ride in the best way. But yeah, all of these albums have got plenty of bass, plenty of punch, plenty of slam. The clarity of the instruments is fantastic. The separation is there. Things that you want in a great sounding recording. And let's get started with Dreamboat Annie from Heart. Their fantastic 1976 album. This thing sounds amazing. I have a Santa Maria pressing, and this was mastered at Ken Dunn Recorders in the San Fernando Valley outside of Los Angeles. Ken Dunn Recorders was a fantastic boutique mastering house. They were a huge name in the mid to late 1970s, set up originally by Kent Duncan. So Ken Dunn, that's where the Ken Dunn comes from. This was on the Mushroom Records label. It has Ken Dunn stamped in the dead wax on side A and B. Highly, highly recommended. The 1981 Rolling Stones album Tattoo You was an incredible kind of return to form and an unlikely candidate for the Stones because it was kind of a patchwork album. They dipped back into sessions from Black and Blue, also I believe Goat's Head Soup, to kind of assemble the group of songs that made up this album. I had this originally in high school on vinyl as well. I remember how great this record sounded. I have a pressing from, it was pressed at EDP You'll see EDP in an oval stamped in the dead wax, but most importantly, look for Master Disc and RL for Robert Ludwig. This thing sounds amazing. Side 2 of this album might be the best side of any Rolling Stones album. I know that's a contentious comment, most likely, but stack up side 2 against other very, very highly regarded Rolling Stones albums. I think this thing definitely holds up. What a great sounding record. In 1978, Steely Dan had put out Asia in 1977. They were working on the follow-up, which would become Gaucho. That album wasn't released until 1980, I believe. And they were basically at the end of the line with ABC Records. ABC was selling Lock, Stock, and Barrel to MCA. So the Gaucho album actually did come out on the MCA label. But in 1978, ABC wanted a compilation greatest hits album from Walter and Donald. Both of the guys basically kind of dug in and agreed to do that project. Contractual reasons, they really couldn't kind of get out of it. Check out my Steely Dan vinyl guide videos for a lot more in-depth information on Steely Dan if you are a Steely Dan fan. But the greatest hits 1972 to 78 double album is an incredible piece of work as far as another thing mastered at Master Disc by Robert Ludwig. The cool thing about this album is, or maybe the unlucky thing is, it is very, very difficult to find RL after the Master Disc stamp, the RL etching from Robert Ludwig on all four sides of this double album. I just found a copy last week that actually has 3 RLs. My previous kind of play copy only had 1 RL of the 4 sides. So I've got 3 out of 4. I'm super happy with that. Presumably, Ludwig was given access to all of the master tapes at that point in time. Some of the songs on this Greatest Hits album sound better than the originals, and the early ABC originals sound super, super good. So, if you are looking for great sounding, all analog Steely Dan, early Steely Dan, everything from Can't Buy a Thrill up to Asia, you want to find this album. And the one that you want is an early ABC label pressing, and you also want to look for that textured cover. Hopefully the camera's going to maybe pick that up, but this is a textured cover, and you want to find the kind of concentric circle with the ABC Records 8th note logo at the top there. Do not waste your time on the MCA label variations of this album. And you want to find an early pressing that is a gatefold with the textured cover, and you'll be very, very happy. That is a great sounding record, double record, Steely Dan's Greatest Hits, 1972 to 78, mastered at Master Disc by Bob Ludwig. The second to last Police studio album was released in 1981. It was a progression in that trio's sound. There was much more emphasis on horns and synthesizers. In fact, all 3 members played various synths on the album, on various songs. The record was mastered at Sterling Sound by Ted Lindsey. This is an incredible sounding record. I actually have an electro sound pressing, and it is semi-translucent, which leads me to believe that it was pressed on this virgin vinyl, Qui-X vinyl. The soundstage on this album is incredible. This thing just kind of rolls out of your speakers in the very best way. Some fantastic music on this. Again, they kind of switched out their sound a bit. They were transgressing from a power trio and moving into more complex time signatures. Sting played a lot of saxophone on this album, believe it or not. And this is just a great record. It had custom labels. There is a look, and easy to find. You can find this record today for $12 or $15. Can't recommend this thing higher. This is a great record from the Police, and it sounds amazing. An album near and dear to my heart is the second studio album released by REM, that little band from Athens, Georgia. I have an early pressing of Reckoning. It's on. It was pressed on Qui-X vinyl. Qui-X vinyl was a virgin vinyl, higher quality vinyl compound, and they were translucent. Now this particular one has a very cool purple color to it, but I have never heard this album sound better than the pressing that I have in my hand. Again, it's that purple translucent. This was mastered at Sterling Sound by Greg Calby, another great mastering engineer that I've done a video on several of other pressings of note from him. Check it out. Great songs like Harbor Coat, South Central Rain, Pretty Persuasion, Time After Time. Michael Stipe was slowly beginning to enunciate a little bit more, but you had the great in-the-pocket groove, the great drumming of Bill Berry, that bass line, the melodic bass lines of Mike Mills, and of course Peter Buck with that chiming guitar. Fantastic record. Reckoning. Try and find a Qui-X translucent copy. There is a brown translucent pressing out there, and also the purple that I have. In 1975, the retooled Fleetwood Mac, now including Lindsey Buckingham and his girlfriend at the time, Stevie Nicks, came out with a self-titled tour de force album called Fleetwood Mac. I have an early textured cover pressing again, so look for a kind of a very pebbled textured cover. This originally came out on the Reprise label, and the pressing that you're looking for, I have a Santa Maria pressing in my hand, but most importantly, you want to find the mastering engineer's stamp in the dead wax, and that would be Ken Dunn Recorders again. So look for Ken Dunn in both sides, and typically you'll find Ken Dunn A, Ken Dunn A, or Ken Dunn A or Ken Dunn B, both sides of the dead wax. This is a great sounding record, and kind of a personal favorite as far as Fleetwood Mac is concerned. The later lineup of Fleetwood Mac, this almost best Rumors, in my opinion. There is just great music on here. Lindsey Buckingham can definitely still bring it here today in 2022. I saw him a little over a month ago in Denver. If you ever have a chance to catch Lindsey solo, run, don't walk, get a ticket, very reasonably priced, and he puts on a hell of a show. The mid to late 1970s is my sweet spot period for David Bowie. It's my favorite period for his music. Young Americans is an incredible album, but even more so, in my opinion, was Station to Station. This is a great sounding pressing. I have a Hollywood pressing on that kind of tan or gold RCA label. This was mastered by Alan Zentz, another fantastic mastering engineer of renown from the 1970s, Alan Zentz. Look for AZ etched in the dead wax on side 1 and side 2. The knock on some of the pressings from this particular album is that there's not enough low end, there's not enough slam, not enough punchy bass. For whatever reason, this Hollywood pressing that I have and the Alan Zentz being into dead wax makes all the difference. This thing sounds amazing, and the music on here, I mean, TVC 1.5, Stay, Wild as the Wind. Legend has it that Boy was in basically a cocaine haze during the entire recording process, and I think he even admitted as much as to not remembering recording sessions, etc. But the music on this thing is incredible. This might be my favorite David Bowie album. Put on track 3, side A, Word on a Wing, and just drift away to that incredible song. The 1976 Boston self-titled debut album is a legendary record, and if you want the best sounding experience and you're looking for an early pressing, you want to find something on that orange Capitol label, and you're going to be looking for WLY etched into dead wax alongside Mastered by Capitol. Mastered by Capitol is going to be stamped, but you're looking for WLY. Why? Because it was mastered by Wally Traugott, one of the finest mastering engineers of all time. I have another video on Wally in my series of mastering engineer videos. Check that one out. Let's take a quick look at this record. Now, actually this was on Epic, but it was mastered at Capitol. There's that orange label. And the issue that we have right now sitting in 2022 with finding original copies of this album or early pressings, this was a big party album. And drinks, joints, you name it, were being passed around at house parties when this thing was being played. And you can just kind of see the tone arm jumping right now and scratching across the record at countless house parties in the United States of America in 1976, 1977. If you're lucky enough to find something in VG Plus to near mint, snatch it up no matter what the price, because it sounds absolutely amazing. In 1971, kind of born from that Lifehouse project, Pete Townsend and The Who put out Who's Next. I actually am going to talk about two different pressings. They both sound incredible. They're both first or early pressings. This is a track record early press from, of course, the United Kingdom. And then in my other hand is an early West Coast pressing cut by Doug Sachs from the Mastering Lab on Decca. Both of these have got incredible qualities. In fact, the Doug Sachs cut, the West Coast cut, was used for one of the sides of this UK pressing that I have. That would be side 1. Side 2 was pressed by Bilbo. Bilbo, of course, is Dennis Blackham. Let's take a quick look at the track record first. You'll notice that there was no way I was going to let this record go. Actually, I kind of sought this thing out on eBay. I found a very reasonably priced copy. It managed to get to my home here in Colorado safely. I can't say that about all purchases I've made over the last couple years coming from the UK, unfortunately, but this thing arrived safely. I was intrigued by how clean that cover looked. but more importantly, I wanted to have the Doug Sax cut on side one, and you can actually tell from Doug Sax had a very distinctive handwriting style, and you'll see that on the early Decca records and also on this pressing. This actually has MG12888 etched into the dead wax on this track record. And you also can see that the track is kind of a matte black, the label. It's not a glossy, which later pressings had more of a glossy look to that label. So that's a telltale sign that you have an early pressing when you have the matte black label. But importantly, we can identify that this was a Doug Sax cut on side one from that kind of distinctive etching and handwriting style that he had. The eights are kind of tilted to the right, and we can make the connection between this and also the exact same style on the Decca US pressing. Anyway, Keith Moon has never sounded better. John Entwistle is fully there, how you want to hear John Entwistle. Fully defined bass lines, plenty of punch on the bottom end of this UK pressing. Maybe a higher quality vinyl compound as well. If you can get your hands on an early track with that Doug Sax cut, by all means try and find one. If you can't find that, or if you're in the US like I am, you don't want to go through the hassle and the expense of trying to source one of those from the UK, because they're not easy to find here stateside. Look for an early track. Look for an early Decca pressing. Let's take a look at that. Similarly, I just found this record about 3 weeks ago. I have this Decca pressing in the dead wax has W1 on side 1 and W1 on side 2. That is an indication that it's a very, very early pressing, and it has that kind of singular style of etched handwriting that can only be Doug Sax. And when you hear this thing, you know it's a fantastic early pressing cut by Doug Sax. A great listening experience for this record. They can still be found quite easily here in the US. You just have to dig through used shops, antique stalls, etc. Look for a W1 or a W2 or a W3 and that distinctive Doug Sax etched handwriting. You're going to love what you hear. The 1974 Neil Young album, On the Beach, was one of his kind of famous trilogy of albums known as the Ditch albums. After the huge success of Harvest, everybody wanted to hear kind of Harvest Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Neil had other things in mind, and he put out Time Fades Away, and then he put out On the Beach. Now, On the Beach, kind of a very, very melancholy, moody record. Quite a bit of United States politics during the waning days of the Nixon era are echoed in this. There is some fantastic kind of uplifting music as well. The title or the first track on side 1, Walk On, is amazing. But this thing sounds pristine. It's dead silent. It's an early reprise label pressing. This is actually a Terre Haute pressing that I have in my hand. And the early pressings do not have stereo at the bottom of the label in block letters. Later pressings do have that stereo. So that's how I know this is an early pressing. I do not know offhand who mastered this thing, but I do know that Al Schmidt was the engineer. He's a legendary engineer. and did a great job with this thing. This sounds absolutely amazing. There is zero surface noise if you can find a clean copy. A very dynamic, full sounding soundstage, dynamic recording. That is On the Beach, Neil Young, an original early press. The 1982 Dire Straits album, Love Over Gold, is a sonic delight. This thing explodes out of my system. I have rarely heard a stock pressing album sound better than this thing. I don't have any surface noise on this as well. This is mastered at Masterdisc. Now, Bob Ludwig is credited in the liner notes, but I actually have BK on mine, which is Bill Kipper. Doesn't matter. It sounds absolutely incredible. Seek out any of these pressings that you can find. This particular pressing was SLM pressed at Sheffield Lab Matrix. That is a plating house that was affiliated with Monarch in Los Angeles. This thing just sounds incredible. Industrial Disease, you've never heard it better. The title track is fantastic. What a record. And of course this was on that Warner Brothers label of the time. Love Over Gold, Dire Straits. If you're looking for a fantastic sounding Frank Zappa record, and you want something where it's more accessible, let's say. There's a lot of Frank Zappa music out there. Some people can easily get into some albums. Other albums are more difficult for some people to get into. But I am definitely recommending Shake Your Booty, the 1979 double album from Zappa. This is kind of a unique record. I understand that the basic tracks were kind of laid out live, and then there was a lot of studio work and overdubbing. But this thing sounds absolutely amazing. It was mastered at Masterdisc by that guy named Robert Ludwig. Common theme among many of these albums. Bob Ludwig. An incredible sounding record. Don't put it on if you have young children around, because this is one of the more profane Zappa records. Have a listen to Bobby Brown sometime. But this is just great, great, great. The musicianship with Zappa, as always, is incredible. He had a great band behind him on this. Shake Your Booty, Masterdisc, Robert Ludwig. I've got two more records to talk about. They're both from that incredible band, that kind of blues rock group that Jimmy Page assembled in 1968, Led Zeppelin. I want to talk about Led Zeppelin 2. And everyone knows that the copy to have in your collection, if you can find one, is the Sterling Sound cut. The early Sterling Sound cut by Robert Ludwig. There's a whole legendary story behind this album. I'm sure you've heard it. But this thing, the legend is true. This thing is absolutely amazing. The only one that is near to this would be a George Piros cut from, I believe, 1977. So maybe seek that out. It's much more affordable. But I've talked about this record many times on the channel. I was shocked to find this in the used bins 2 years ago now. I picked this up for, I believe, $30. This thing's in near mint condition. The cymbals of John Bonham, the bass lines from John Paul Jones have never sounded better. This thing has got incredible punch, incredible drive, veering on distortion in some places. It is an amazing hot cut. and that's why it's known as the RL Hot Mix or Hot Cut. If you can find one, get it. Last but not least, I had been looking for a while. I wanted a really nice early pressing of Led Zeppelin 1. I couldn't find an affordable copy or something that was clean. And after doing a ton of research, I picked up a 1974 pressing pressed at Monarch and mastered by George Piros. The great George Piros, he did a ton of work for Atlantic Records. You can see the GP and the dead wax for him in this pressing and many other great pressings that he's responsible for and masterings. I did a video on George Piros as well. This sounds amazing, and it was not incredible. I think I paid $29 for this pressing. But yeah, if you're looking for a great pressing of Led Zeppelin 1, seek out the 1974 Monarch press mastered by George Piros. Led Zeppelin 1, a great, great, great sounding record. Those were 15 of my favorite, best sounding original pressings in my collection, save for one which was a repress. The Led Zeppelin 1 was repressed in 1974. Now, I had a hard time with this because I could have went with another 10 pressings of different records that sound amazing. The bottom line is this, and this is what I've been preaching since day one when I decided to start doing YouTube videos. Early pressings in clean condition can sound amazing. If you look for the better mastering engineers and do a little bit of research on the better pressing plants, in my opinion, those are Specialty Records, Monarch pressings as well, Santa Maria, fine. I've had good luck with Electro Sound. I've had good luck with Terre Haute pressings. The bottom line is you want clean condition records. Send them through an ultrasonic cleaning. If you have any surface noise, you might be pleasantly surprised at the results. But yeah, those are 15 all analog pressings that I love. Thank you for watching. Let's see what happens with this entire Mobile Fidelity issue. I'm just hoping for a little more transparency in how they describe the mastering process of their records. I am not here saying that I'll never buy another MoFi pressing again, but it is a little bit disappointing if we do find out that there was more than one step involved in some of the one steps, or original master recording is maybe just a marketing term. We will find out. Thanks for watching. See you very soon.